Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about drugs, and I'm going to start with a synopsis of a personal story. So we'll wind back to the beginning of 2014. I had just gotten my associates here at LMC. My relationship was going on 7 years. I just gotten a full-time job, manager position, benefits. Basically what I'm getting at is everything was going as good as possible, except I was still severely depressed. I would find myself on my downtime at work just researching reasons why I shouldn't kill myself. And I don't think it was so much that I was sad or upset. I think it was just that I felt like I didn't fit in. Like I didn't feel like there was a place for a person like me in a world like this. So I started brainstorming all the things that I used to have fun doing in high school. I got a PS4, tried to have fun playing video games, couldn't have fun, tried to drink with friends again, just wasn't fun. So I went on down the list, and me and my friends in high school, every once in a while we'd eat magic mushrooms and have some laughs. So I went on a hunt for some magic mushrooms, and after a few months I found them. I didn't know when I'd be able to find them again, if I could, so I got kind of a larger amount so I could eat them as I want to. So I eat them for the first time in many years at a friend's house, and not uncommon, I panic. So I call my girlfriend at the time to pick me up. She takes me home, and I just was not happy. It was like somebody hit the reset button on me, and I was stepping into the shoes of the life that I'd built up until that point, and just kind of getting to look around and see how I like everything. How do I like my job? How do I like my relationship? How do I like where I live? How do I like how I look? And I didn't like any of it. So I got a notebook and a pen, and I went down to my garage and just started writing all the things that I didn't like about myself, all the things I didn't like about the world, and how I was going to change those things. And like I said, I got kind of a larger amount, so this turned into like a 6-month binge of doing this every couple weeks, basically looking in the mirror, crying a lot, and writing of all the things I wanted to change, basically. So you're probably wondering, what's the point here? You had a 6-month binge with mushrooms, had a good experience, what's the point? The point is that if I would have gotten caught with these, I could have gotten up to 7 years in federal prison, which means I would still be in federal prison right now. I would have never had the experience I would have had. I would still be the depressed person I was. And worst of all, I would think that I was a criminal. I would think that I did something wrong when in fact I didn't. So the problem is that in this country we are treating users of certain drugs like criminals. There are many factors contributing to this, the first being the Controlled Substances Act of 1970, which placed many drugs as Schedule 1, meaning they have no accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Others as Schedule 2, meaning they have some medical use. Sorry, Schedule 1 is no medical use. I think I misspoke there. Schedule 3, Schedule 4, and so on. So another problem we have is lobbying. We have private prisons, police unions, alcohol companies, pharmaceutical companies, all lobbying to make sure that these beneficial plants remain illegal. And lastly, we have people whose jobs depend on having people to call criminals. I'm talking about people with quotas to fill, people with prisons to fill, so on. The results of the problem, brought to you by drugpolicy.org, is we have the largest prison population in the world at 2,224,400. And the amount of people incarcerated for drug law violations is 1,297,384. The United States is home to less than 5% of the world's population, but about 25% of the world's prison population. And the U.S. spends more than $51 million per year to continue the war on drugs. I don't know how many of you realize this, but when you read something that says the U.S. spends, that means us taxpayers pay for. So these drug laws are negatively affecting our society on a large scale and each and every one of us on a personal level. We all pay taxes, and according to calbudgetcenter.org, it costs an estimated $50,000 per year per inmate. And legal or illegal, we all use drugs. It just depends on whether the drug is alcohol, Xanax, sugar, caffeine, pot, whatever. They're all drugs. So my purpose, sorry, fast forwarded there. Our drug war isn't only affecting this country. According to countthecost.org, because these drugs aren't available and being distributed legally, it encourages violent criminals to take advantage of the opportunity to turn a profit. And because these drugs are not being safely regulated, it increases the chance of drug contamination. People go out looking for a drug on the street, get something totally different, and end up overdosing and dying. So my purpose today is to inspire you to objectively analyze the role of drugs in our society. Solutions we'll go over are: we change the way we talk about drugs, and we decriminalize, not legalize, all drugs. My sources are mic.com, countthecost.org, drugpolicy.org, calbudgetcenter.org. maps.org, niaaa.nih.gov, and deadiversion.usdoj.gov. According to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, in 2013, alcohol, a legal drug, was responsible for 88,000 deaths in the U.S. and caused over 30% of all driving fatalities. Now imagine if an illegal Schedule I substance like cannabis was responsible for 88,000 deaths and over 30% of driving fatalities. Surely this would at least make the news. So the first solution is we change the language we use when talking about drugs. I think that in a way we all need to come out. I know some people are embarrassed or ashamed to talk about the drugs they use, but when I hear people say things like, oh, my family member or my friend, they ruined their life because of drugs, you're not helping anybody, because I don't know if that person had a Xanax problem, an alcohol problem, or a crack problem. You just left the door wide open. I think that we need to be more specific. I think that when talking about drugs, people should at least state whether it was a stimulant, a pharmaceutical, an opiate, etc. Drugs is just simply too much of a blanket term, and most of us judge whether or not a drug is dangerous or not by whether or not it's legal. And yet, psilocybin, a Schedule I substance, treats addiction, according to Johns Hopkins University. MDMA, a Schedule I substance, treats PTSD, according to the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And cannabis, a Schedule I substance, treats too much for me to name in this presentation. So, the overall solution we should work towards is we decriminalize all drugs. Why? Because people shouldn't be put in a cage for using a drug. I think that if the drug causes them to become violent or they start stealing, things like that, they should be incarcerated for that, not just for using the substance. You can go to the next slide, please. And here you can just see from 2001 we have prescription drug overdoses increasing steadily. Those are legal drugs. And from 2001 we have heroin, a Schedule I illegal substance, overdoses increasing. So whether or not these drugs are legal or illegal, it isn't really changing the increases in overdoses. Luckily, we have some data to go off of here, because according to MIC.com, in 2001, Portugal decriminalized all drugs. And in 2015, they had the second least amount of deaths caused by illegal drugs in all of Europe. They're spending less on incarceration and more on treatment. Continued drug use is decreasing, injection use is down 50%, and there's been less drug-induced deaths, which I think should be the overall goal here. This is a matter of basic human freedoms and sovereignty over our own bodies and consciousness. In conclusion, the problem is that we are using tax dollars to put users of certain drugs in cages. And the solutions we went over are we change the language we use when discussing drugs, and we decriminalize all drugs. And I'll end with two quotes. The first by Graham Hancock, who says, "It's not a war on drugs, it's a war on consciousness." And the second by Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws."